KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station for the Inland Empire.
Welcome to Smart Health Talk with your host, Elaine McFadden.
Take a walk on the wild side. Will the birds and the bees survive? Right before me, my newfound hippie side. Once ignored these conspiracies online. Out the window, visions of the earth. Sign me up now, make sure you use your smart. Take a walk on the wild side. Will the birds and the bees survive? Would your children lie to see Mother Nature sigh?
Welcome to Smart Health Talk with your host, Elaine McFadden.
Welcome, everyone. This is Smart Health Talk Radio Show right here on KCAA Radio. And in case you didn't know, we're 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and 102.3 FM. That's right. And you can even go to KCAAradio.com and watch us here in the studio on Ustream. You can listen to us live on there, whether you want to watch us or listen. And guess what? Our podcasts go up right after the show. So you can share this show with your friends. Yeah, this is going to be a great show today. Let me tell you, you are not going to want to hit that tuner and change the station. No, you're going to want to stay right here with us because we have our country's largest organic farm, Azure Farms, and they are going to be our guests today and talk about a big situation that happened on their farm where, here for 18 years they've been farming, not using pesticides, growing grains for great companies like Bob's Red Mill, and which is my favorite flour to buy, by the way, and just do so many wonderful things, showing us that it's possible to have an organic farm and have a profit and do it all the right way, be sustainable. And along came some people complaining that they have weeds that were blowing seeds onto their land, and said, oh, those horrible noxious weeds, they're contaminating our land and you have to do something about it. And oh my gosh, we just learned the power of the Weed Abatement Department, which is huge. They have the power to tell farmers and people actually, those are noxious weeds in your yard and we're going to make you get rid of them. So noxious weeds apparently are something that we have to force people to get rid of, and yet it's okay to be spraying these pesticides right and left. Poisonous, endocrine-disrupting pesticides that cause cancer. That's right. And we had some big decisions going on this week. Big decisions. Are we there, Brandon? Okay. And okay, we got to lead into this with Christina Aguilera because this has been a fight, everybody. It has been a huge fight. Hit it, Brandon. Oh, that wasn't the way. But anyway, this is all about being a fighter, everyone. Thank you, Christina. Christina Aguilera says it best when she says that we are fighters. That's right. We are fighters, and we have fought hard. So many of us, there was no doubt in my mind that these pesticides are causing harm to our health, harm to our environment, poisoning our food, poisoning our water, poisoning our air, and us and every other living thing within any kind of distance of it, because that pesticide is drifting, people. It is not just staying right in place. Blows like the wind. Yeah, well, pesticides blow like the wind along with it right over to other people's houses. And we just had a huge decision, huge decision this week where, in case you didn't know the story, I'm going to tell you. Yeah, because it's a good one, okay? It's really good. Okay, in California, which we are leaders for the world, we have a huge pull in California with what we do. Okay, we have people that were able to round up. You know that stuff that they advertise on television all the time, telling you to spray all around your house like it's all safe and everything, and poison your family and your yard where your kids walk, and breathe it in, kind of a thing. Well, that stuff is cancer causing. And guess what? Now the state of California agrees. Now they agreed on this over a year and a half ago. And they said, okay, that stuff's cancer causing. We are going to make sure that every glyphosate containing product, which is the active ingredient, even though there's all kinds of other ingredients, even hundreds of them, that are even more toxic than the glyphosate. And together, those chemicals mix together and form other chemicals that are even more toxic as well. But do we test those? No, we don't test those. They just test the glyphosate and allow them to put all these other things in there and make this pesticide cocktail, which they never tested. But guess who did? The World Health Organization. They did this a couple of years ago. And when they looked at the product as a whole, they said, this stuff is cancer causing. It's definitely cancer causing. And so, boy, did that start a big deal. Oh my gosh. An uproar globally because so many people are using Roundup. And guess what? It kills everything in the soil too. And there's microbes in there that pull carbon from the air. There was a headline today. Our carbon is going up, up, up. And we've been reporting this for years. So it's just even higher. It just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And they said despite our cutting back on fossil fuels, but let me tell you, there are developing countries, they're using more and more fossil fuels because they want to be like us. You know, how can we blame them? We are on the road to the point of no return. We keep doing this. This amount of carbon we have not been this high since the dinosaurs were here. I'll put it that way. That should kind of put things in perspective. That's how high the carbon is right now. Okay, and this is the thing that like really scares me. Catastrophic weather events. And we know that we've been having them. Just wait. It's not if, it's when. When are we going to have the next event and how bad is it going to be? Because it could do billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of damage. You know, what if like giant floods come and a big old wave comes and hits Manhattan? Definitely possible. Okay, so we do not want to go there. We want as least amount of extreme weather events as possible. And when we lower that carbon, our chances of avoiding catastrophic weather events go down. So that seems like a good idea to me. I want to do that. With those little microbes in the soil that we have killed 90% of with glyphosate, they do that. They pull that carbon, they lock it in the soil, it becomes food like candy for the roots of the plant, for the other microbes. It's just like a perfect system that nature created. And yet we're acting like we can do one better. You know, it's just if we work with nature and use integrated pest management and have healthy soils, it's just a whole different situation. And what I love about Azure Farms is that they prove that that system works. The biggest organic farm in the country. Yes, they are proving that it works. That's why I love them, love them, love them. And they're going to be joining us right here today, everybody. Okay, so what happened in California? The little story. Okay, so over a year and a half ago, California said this stuff is cancer causing. We agree. And we're going to put this on the Prop 65 list. And what it means when you get on that Prop 65 list is there's something going on with this that causes harm, okay? And what they said, Roundup glyphosate causes cancer, okay? And boy, Monsanto didn't like that one little bit. No siree. So they took it to court, and they fought it for 1.5 years. And guess what? They lost. That was last April. We were celebrating them. We thought, but I kept thinking, man, I know we got to keep an eye on that Monsanto, because they're not going to just sit down. They are not happy about this. They are fuming, because what that meant was every single product sold in California that had glyphosate had to have a cancer warning on it. And you know who I worry about? Our landscapers. All you out there, landscapers, farmers that are using this and being exposed to it. I found an article in the paper about a Redlands man, this is even a few years ago, that claims that Roundup gave him cancer, along with thousands of other people that are filing lawsuits right now. But California, I got to tell you, I am so proud of you. You did not back down. Even when Monsanto planted, this is just to show you how you can't trust all media. You can trust Smart Health Talk, because we tell it straight here. We don't have any special interest groups trying to sway us one way or another, paying us under the table. Nothing like that. No, we bring you the absolute truth here, and we research it, and we make sure before we report it. But what happened was Monsanto, somehow, I don't know how they got Reuters to do it, but they planted a story and tried to use that to argue that that case should be overturned. Well, the judge said, not doing it. And so they lost again. So, woo! Go ahead. Where's that party song, Brandon? Because we're celebrating here.
We're all having a good time out there.
Yeah! Woo! Yeah! That's right. We're having a party here, everybody. We're celebrating. Yeah! Woo! That's right. We got something to celebrate, because I am sick and tired if I see another Roundup commercial trying to get people to spray that around their house when I know that stuff causes cancer. I tell you, I am happy today. I am really, really happy. And I want to thank Robert Kennedy Jr., because he's now my hero. He's been the one fighting this. He's been going against Monsanto for decades, and this is a huge win. He must feel so proud. And for all those people that he's representing that have cancer, my heart goes out to you. I am so sorry that you have lost a loved one. I'm sorry, this is the part that like really gets to me. You've lost a loved one, or you have been diagnosed with cancer and are fighting for your life right now. We're with you, okay? We're trying. We're fighting out here for you, because every single person that ends up with cancer is one too many. And every single person in this country that does not have health care is one too many. And we just I'm going to put a link on our homepage after the show, but we just uploaded a new video. We had a great interview. We are trying to help people understand what the heck is going on with health care. Because I tell you, we have to stop letting these politicians tell us what we're going to and going to not get in our healthcare system. We have to start standing up and say, no, you are going to create a healthcare plan that works for us. And this is what we want in that healthcare plan. We expect this, 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 and this. And if it doesn't have it, then we're not accepting it. Why are we letting these big corporations tell us what we can and cannot have in our health care bill? But we have to get clear on what the heck we want and what we should be asking for. Over the next week, I'm going to be releasing my 10 healthcare commandments, and these are going to be 10 things, because we're going to start with 10, that are going to be our list of things that we require in a healthcare bill. Now, I tell you, I don't know why people would not want a single-payer system. The more that I learn, the more upset I get. These insurance companies, 70% of the money that they get, of all the billions of dollars, go towards care. The rest of that money, they spend on admin. Medicare spends 2%. They spend 30%. And what are they doing with that money? They got people figuring out who is sick. And then they have them working to get them out of their plans. They don't want them. They don't want them at all. They want to get rid of them because they know they're going to cost them money. And that's how they make money, by denying people care. And sometimes that's telling people you're going to die. And we don't happen to think that's right, especially when other countries are doing fantastic. Every single person in their entire country has health care. Just imagine, get up in the morning, hey, I got health care. Woo! I got health care. I don't have to worry about it. That's what I want everyone saying. And guess what? Those countries have proven they have longer lives. They live longer, way longer than us. Well, not way. I mean, a couple years when you're getting old, that's a big deal. You know, they're living longer. They have lower infant mortality. And when we got babies dying that shouldn't be dying, that should be a red flag to all of us. Okay? And these other countries that have universal health care, they're going to the doctor 6 times a year where we go 4. So they are staying healthier, living longer. They're happier. They have no stress. They don't have to worry about all of this. Don't you want that? And they are paying their CEOs like, you know, one of them was getting like $200 million. $200 million for one of these insurance company CEOs. Most of them are getting like $20 million. Where do you think all this money is going? All the billions that they're getting. Instead, we could be using those billions to bring services to the American people, services that we need, have 100% coverage, just like, and trust me, this is not just like a couple of countries. No, we have like 20, 30 or more countries that have universal, every single person. There is not one person in that country that dies from not having insurance. We have tens of thousands of people. We have someone dying every 12 minutes because they don't have health care. Since when is that acceptable in the United States? And you know what? It is a right, because it's our tax money and it should be used to take care of us, not to be spending on more bombs and planes and stupid stuff like protecting oil companies in other countries like what's happening right now over in Syria. How much are we spending over there? Plenty for all of us to have health care. And we're there because of oil. You should be asking yourself, why are we fighting these fights? They try to say, oh, we're stopping terrorism. No, it's all about oil. It's all about oil, baby. Follow the money. Okay, so that was our good news. And, oh, I got David Cross right here on the phone. And he's our guest for today from Azure Farms. Hey, David.
Hey, how are you, Elaine?
Oh, I'm feeling good. We got a good day today. I was just announcing the fact that in California, Monsanto lost again on its bid to not be on our Prop 65 list of cancer-causing substances, where they have to put cancer-causing on every single product they sell in the state. They have tried and tried to get out of that one, but guess what? The judge said, sorry, your rooter story that you planted is not getting you out of this one. So now the people get to get that cancer warning on every product. I know it's not everything, but hey, it's a start, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, guess what, everybody? David knows all about Roundup, don't you, David?
I actually know very little about Roundup. I am an organic gardener, and I know some of the awful effects of Roundup, and I know its background, and I know some of the things that Monsanto have done. But, you know, I think it's good to be aware of the dark, but focus on the light, I suppose, is my own philosophy for me and my family.
Well, you knew enough about it to, like, stay away from it, right? You knew enough about it to know that I don't want this on my farm.
Precisely, yeah.
And that's what I was alluding to. I didn't expect you to know, like, all kinds of the intricacies about it. But you knew enough that I don't want to be exposed to this. I don't want my family. I don't want my workers. I don't want my soil and every other living thing on my farm exposed to glyphosate. But I tell you, everyone, David has a really interesting story that I think we have something to learn from. It was, I'm sure it was kind of an emotional thing to have to go through, and that's why I'd like to see this, some good come out of it, just like you. I'm the optimist all the time. Unfortunately, all these other things that happen try to beat me down, but at the end of the day, I say, you know what? I'm not going to let them win. I'm going to get back up and I'm going to fight another day. And you guys have been organic for it's 18 years now, right?
Oh no, we've been farming organically for over 40 years now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. The farm that you're referring to that was at the center of this controversy some weeks ago, Azure Farm in Morrow in Oregon in Sherman County, has been a certified organic farm for about 18 years. But Azure and the Stelzer family actually go back farming organically. Azure Standard was founded 30 years ago this fall, and David Stelzer, the CEO and founder of Azure Standard, has been farming organically for over 40 years, and his family goes back farming in the Pacific Northwest for over 100 years. So, we have a long tradition of organic farming and organic farming practices, yeah.
That is so awesome. That means that I was probably buying your products because I have been using organic products for like 40 years myself. I was shopping at health food stores in my early 20s. And I started to learn about pesticides, and I thought, like, who the heck would want to eat food with poison on it? I mean, it just never, I could never understand where people would just accept that. And I've had a lot of time to think about it. But, they keep trying to say, oh, we have to have these pesticides or we can't feed the world kind of a thing, and only GMOs can feed the world. And what do you guys think when you hear those kind of things, given that you've successfully ran organic farms for 40 to 100 years and made it into a profitable business?
Yeah, here's the thing that I believe about organic food myself, and as you can tell, I'm not from Texas. I'm originally from England. I've lived in the States 15 years, and I've lived and traveled and worked around the world. And the thing that I've realized, I started eating organic food about 30 years ago, and when I was a kid, my dad used to grow our own vegetables for our family, and he largely used organic methods, actually. He knew a guy with a horse, and he would go and get the rotted manure from this guy, and we would practice some of the techniques that Elliot Coleman speaks of in his books, organic gardening books. Here's the thing that I realized about when someone chooses organic is you're making a conscious choice to look into what you're putting into your body and what we're doing to the environment. And that choice is a shift in consciousness. And so to me, the choice to choose organic, it's never really been just about food. It's about a shift in awareness and a change in one's belief system. So, it's the same everywhere. When you look at organic, you also look at the debate about vaccinations. You look, you mentioned stuff about universal health care, etc. there before I came on the show. It's all about a shift in attention and a shift in awareness. And so, for us, the reason you brought me on this show was we'd originally started talking about the debate about a few weeds in a wheat field in Central Oregon. And to us, that was never really about whether or not our farm was going to be sprayed with herbicides. It was really about the fundamental battle about the difference between organic farming methods and modern farmer-controlled pH farmer, not FAR, big business controlled, spray this on your field, kill all the bad stuff, don't worry, we've got you covered in terms of all the good stuff. And so that's really what it was about to us. It was about the difference between choosing a method of agriculture which is nourishing to the environment, to the animals, and also to the ecosystem, and also healthier for people. And that was really the fundamental thing that was at stake for us.
Well, that's pretty much why we have Smart Health Talk on the air. Those are fundamentals that we believe in wholeheartedly, and that people, should have a choice. they should at least be able to choose that. But the thing is, it's just so frustrating that as a dietitian that I wish I could heal with food, but it's like I have to go through this whole thing and like try to explain to people why organic is better when it shouldn't even be that hard. I mean, it should be, in my mind, all food should be organic. Um, I I think that we could transition to a system like that if we could get other farmers to accept it and be willing to learn new techniques, which are really old techniques, I suppose. um, but how do you guys do it? I try to tell people how special organic farmers are because I used to sell produce and go up to farms, and I just fell in love with the people and what was in their heart and what they were trying to do. They were trying to bring safe, nutritious food to people in a way where they, like you said, that you weren't, adding, toxins or these other things, to the environment or to the food, the land. What is organic? How do you guys talk about your food when you talk to other people?
Well, the reason that our company is called Azure Standard is when David Stelzer first founded the company, 30 or so years ago. Well, let's wind back 40 years. David, as a kid, had a few health problems and started to change his diet and found that improved his health. And then as a family, on their family farm, the Stelzer family decided to stop using poisons and artificial chemicals and stuff on their land, and they moved towards organic practices. And then, he started to sell some rye and some wheat flour from his family farm from the back of his truck. And then that started to grow, and it grew organically into what we know as Azure Standard today. It grew from the Pacific Northwest. We currently deliver throughout the United States organic, healthy food. But to us, when we talk about the word organic, when we started Azure Standard, there wasn't the same recognition of what organic means. And there were a few companies and businesses then that were claiming things were organic that weren't organic. So Azure Standard, the idea was that we put a standard out there that was saying this is the quality of food that we're going to accept ourselves, that we would feed our own family. And so we put that out there as a sort of certification of our own, that you could get healthy, nutritious food that was grown using organic practices, but that also had great flavor, etc. The USDA really treats organic certification as merely a method of marketing food. It doesn't really consider organic as more than a sales technique, actually. There are certain things that you have to do to your land to make sure that it can pass a certification to be organic. But, I've had some great food that wasn't organic on my global travels, and I've also had some organic food that wasn't that tasty. I'm sure we all have, You're kind of eating it and you're thinking, well, this must be good for me because it's organic, but it really doesn't have a depth of flavor, and it doesn't feel like it's a pleasurable experience to eat. So the idea behind Azure Standard is that, sure, it's grown without chemicals. You say yourself just then that that's how all food should be grown. And certainly, in Europe, if you go to Holland or Belgium, Sweden, United Kingdom, over there, it's becoming much more, well, of course it's organic. So what's the next step from organic? And for us, that's what we've been doing in Azure Standard for over 30 years, is that it's the organic practices, it's delicious, it's nutritious, it's something that if you were going to grow it in your own garden, you would be happy to put that on your table. For us at Azure Standard, it's the next best thing to growing it yourself. So, we've been providing millions of people throughout the United States organic food delivered to their homes over the last 30 years, and it's been an absolutely fantastic journey to do that.
I'm sure you have a lot of people come and talk about how wonderful it's been to have access to your food, which is the way, I would love to see people get excited about food again. That if you've ever had the chance to have, the really fresh ingredients prepared, in a way that it's just absolutely delicious, it kind of takes food to a whole new level, that whole experience of food. And with all this junk food and fast food, it's like, to me, there's no surprise there. It's like the same thing every time, which is what they want. They want to have the same thing every time, but I don't want to eat the same food all the time. And the way they prepare, the way they get the ingredients, how those ingredients are raised, or the animals are raised, it's just not something that I want to participate in or support. So by not eating it, I'm also creating a statement that way too. But I really want to thank you, David, because you just explained that so eloquently. And I think that I'm starting to have a better understanding why people are so confused about organic, because it's frustrating to me when I try to talk to people about organic food. Sorry, my air conditioner went off in my house, and it's like 90 degrees. I think it fried my brain. I try to, have a conversation, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's like fake. It's not even like really organic. You can't even trust it." And having gotten to know these farmers and organic farmers and how much they put into their farm and growing the produce, I kind of take it personally, even though it's not totally directed at me, and I want to defend them because I know how hard they work, and to create that product. What do you get a lot of that too, where people, when you talk to them about organic, they're skeptical?
They are. And, there's a lot of very hardworking farmers and good people who don't practice organic methods.
Right.
I mean, let's not be elitist about organic food. I myself, I farm, although I don't have thousands of acres. I have a couple of acres, and on my small vegetable plot, I've grown 25 different kinds of vegetables, herbs. I can stuff, I source stuff, I've raised all different kinds of livestock on my pasture. I converted an old fridge years ago to do my own charcuterie. I mean, the reason I first got into growing stuff actually was as a kid, 4 years old. We grew up in England. Our house was 950 square feet. There were 5 of us in it. I shared a bedroom with my brother. We didn't have a yard. And when you opened our front door, it was sidewalk. It was a classic English, what we call a 2-up, 2-down. It was a small house. And we didn't have much money. My dad was a plumber. My mum was a housewife. And my dad met this old woman who lived very close to us. And she had a horse. And this horse had lived on this plot of land at the back of her house. And the horse had passed away. This old 300-year-old horse had passed away. And so my dad rented this plot of land from this woman for a shilling a month, 5 pence a month. It would have been probably 8 cents in those days, in the early 60s.
Wow.
And he put a piece of land into a thriving vegetable garden. And so, I didn't even know a different way of getting my food as a kid, both from economic necessity and also the fact that my dad was doing it. And that's, what happened. My mum and my dad both went through the Second World War. You've probably heard of Victory Gardens, where the governments in England
yes.
and United States, so they encouraged homeowners to grow their own food. And so that frugal and a vital philosophy in our populations was prevalent in the war. And so, I grew up with that. And then what happened, of course, after the war is that there was this economic boom and there was population growth, and you know, the governments were worried that the food supply could run out, and this is where agricultural companies saw their advantage, that they could, you know, promise an abundant food supply. And of course, at that time, you had the pictures of communist Russia with famines and stuff, and so this is where the hold of agricultural chemicals took place. And so we divested that responsibility of feeding and nourishing ourselves, and we gave that up. We gave it away to large-scale agriculture. And so when someone now cynically speaks of, you know, the modern agricultural system as being able to provide for everyone, it's a fallacy, because supposing that supply dried up, supposing that these chemicals really are harmful to our system, all that you're basing your faith on a system without really looking into it. And that's the idea of self-sufficiency. The idea of self-sufficiency is about self-sufficiency in your own consciousness, in terms of the information. You know, at Azure, we say that Azure Standard, it's how you feed your family. But feed, for us, is much more than just food. It's about the soul, the spirit, the community, the world, the ideas and information that we share as part of this consciousness revolution, which is what the organic movement is all about. You know, and the reason that I took up gardening and growing and rearing and hunting and fishing and catching my own food again was that I love cooking. I'm an obsessive cook, and I found that the only way I could ever get the absolute best quality ingredients was through companies like Azure Standard, local CSAs, community-supported agriculture, but actually growing it myself, knowing where the food that I'm feeding my family came from, the ability to walk out there in the morning and pull a tomato off the vine or take some chard from the ground. It's an amazing experience to have that vibrancy of life inside the food that you then bring into your kitchen and you cook and you feed your family with.
And your body.
You know, well, absolutely. And it's a pleasurable thing to do. And if you can't do that, then entrusting a company like Azure Standard that has these values to feed you and feed your family is the next best thing to growing it yourself. You've probably seen the big organic company chart, and you see the brands that we know on there, and then you see how many of these brands have been utterly consumed by large multinational corporations. I mean, you also look at things like last week when Amazon had acquired Whole Foods, you know. So Azure Standard remains absolutely independent. It's why when things come up like that whole issue of whether they're going to spray a wheat field with noxious chemicals, that we're able to respond in this way because we're part of that organic movement, and we're able to represent that organic movement in absolutely the best way. So, you know, it's a fantastic thing to consciously choose where you're getting your food from. I have four sons and 2 daughters. I have 6 kids, and my third eldest son is a vegan. He recently converted to become a vegan. I am not a vegan, but I was so pleased that he'd done this because he had gone and done the research and made a conscious choice about the food and the lifestyle that he wanted. And I think that that is something that anyone who's cynical about organic food, it's a real shame because it's very difficult to make a conscious choice for modern, large-scale, agrochemical farming methods. It's very difficult to make a conscious choice for that because when you look into it, you realize that the information that underpins that philosophy is absolutely devoid of any sense of consciousness. So once you start to ask the questions of where the food comes from, how is it grown, how does it taste, what's the nutritional content, and what's it doing to the environment around me, that's where the logical step becomes, I'm going to choose organic, non-GMO food.
I could listen to you for a long time because I love everything that you're saying. It's so reflective of the way that I feel, but you say it so much better. You really do. It's and that's kind of the evolution that I went through. And then it seems like the more that I learned, the more motivated I was to seek out the best food for all the reasons that you said too. Is when I cook, I want the meal to be pleasing to myself, but everyone else that I'm cooking. You know, I'm kind of selfish. I want people to be going, "Oh, Elaine, this is like so great. This is the best I've ever had." That definitely is something I like if I can get that kind of response. And it just seems like, the deck is stacked in your favor. That's going to happen when you get good quality fresh food, just picked, grown in healthy soil, kind of a thing, that it's just so much more enjoyable. I mean, how many things in life do we enjoy more, more than food? Well, I know there is a couple out there, things that might take precedence over food, but it's really one of the biggies. And I just want every single meal. As you get older, I'm 61 this year. As you get older, you just, you think, okay, how much time do I have left? And I want to make that time full of, wonderful, incredible meals that taste fantastic. And I love my body enough to where I'm willing to fight. I'm willing to go out of my way a little bit to make sure that my body is nourished and gets the very best that I can do with what I have to work with. And I live in about a 900 square foot house right now, but at least I have a yard. Not quite as bad. And I grew up with my grandmother would have a garden and she would can. And so I think when you've tasted really good food, when you try food that's not at that level of quality, you can really tell the difference. Was that something that you found when you started eating food that wasn't grown by your dad?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've lived in 6 countries. I've worked in 23 countries over the last 30 years. And
oh, my gosh.
I think one of the best meals I ever, one of the best meals I ever had was actually a fried piranha from a street vendor in Ecuador.
Oh, wow.
Which was excellent. But, I think that food cooked with love and food cooked with a sense of presence is very important. And I think that we've become so devoid of that sense of soul and sense of spirit in our food and our diet, and the whole experience of eating and sharing that experience with our friends and family. The number of fast food restaurants that spring up, we drive past, we bung some food in our mouth just to fill our stomachs, but, the sense of having that, you're not hungry because you filled your stomach, but boy, are you hungry for some true satisfaction. And I can safely say that is something that I enjoy every day. Food, cooking, the experience of sharing a meal with friends and family is an absolutely wonderful thing. And, people can start very simply on this journey. You don't have to believe our own revelations about organic food. Go and buy a packet of organic seeds, find an old bucket in your garage, poke a couple of holes in the bottom, get a small bag of potting soil, grow some potatoes, grow a bit of lettuce, grow some basil, and just experience the vibrancy of that fresh food grown without the use of harmful chemicals or pesticides, etc. And that's how I started getting back into organic garden. I just threw some salad leaf, different varieties of salad leaf seeds and soil and just started, and then that grew into, I started to read some of the books by John Jeavons, Elliot Coleman. I started to get back into and relearn all the stuff that I had known as a kid. And then I started canning, and then I started experimenting with sauces and chutneys, and then I got into baking bread again and making sauces, and the whole thing just became an experience. I mean, if you look at the statistics now for how much time people spend online posting pictures of cute cats on Facebook or watching soap operas and things on television, we have got so much time available in our lives that we can devote to an activity which is more nourishing for the soul. And it's actually fun to grow your own food and then to can it. If you get some peaches and you can them, and then one rainy December day you reach for a little bit of sunshine off the shelf and maybe have it with some fresh custard or some ice cream or something like that. It's such an amazing experience to take back control of your food supply and your nourishment in life. Nourishment not just in terms of food, but in terms of the ideas and the people you meet and the way that you can change the world through changing your own consciousness. That's what organic food is about, to me, to us at Azure Standard.
We have some of the same memories. My grandmother had her garden. She canned just shelves and shelves of peaches, the best peaches ever. And we'd make homemade vanilla ice cream and put those canned peaches over it. And I will never forget that. That was, and that's it, to me as well, is like creating these memories, these cherished memories that you share that with your kids, and they will always remember that. When they think back, these are the things that we really cherish in life. Not so much just having stuff and belongings. Like, I love the way you describe it as the experience. And that is what we really cherish and what we think about in our last days as the things that we appreciate in our life.
Mm-hmm. And in the Buddhist philosophy, they say that you own stuff and it ends up owning you. People have got so much stuff, and this is why stores like Goodwill do so well, is because we've got so much junk that we acquire, it consumes us, it clutters our lives, we throw it out, we get rid of it. The simple pleasure of sitting down as a family or with friends and meal times, family meal times, have become such a rare thing. My kids, we've always enjoyed family meal times. I've had my kids garden with me. They've been hunting and fishing. They've farmed. The first time I went deer hunting with my youngest daughter, she was 9 weeks old. And, they've grown up knowing where their food comes from. They fish, they farm, they grow stuff themselves, they help with the harvest. Stuff that we have left over, we take to the local food bank. They bake bread. They have a conscious appreciation for where their food comes from. I remember my eldest daughter, Sequoia, when she was at school some years ago. They're at a local charter school. I'm chairman of the board there, and it's a great school. And they went around the class asking the kids, what's your favorite food? And of course kids were saying, oh, I like fish sticks, or I like tacos, etc. And it came to Sequoia, and she said, I can't decide between braised oxtail or boeuf bourguignon. And then she said,
I love that.
Boeuf bourguignon. She said yes. And she described, she was about 5.5 at the time, she described the classic method of making boeuf bourguignon. And it was just fantastic that she had that love and conscious realization of where food comes from and the experience, and something deeper than the superficial quality of, fish sticks or tacos, that she knew where her food came from and she knew what to do with it. And that's an experience, I think, that all my kids have had. And, I have a sort of soft rule in my house that you have to try something 10 times and still dislike it before I'll let that swing. So we've tried all sorts of things. The main thing here is to encourage new experiences, and I believe for children to truly understand the source of their food and how absolutely fortunate we are in this country to have that ability to have a free supply of food. And there are many children and families in the United States who are hungry and don't have a great supply of nutritious food. One of the things I find really sad is when I'm in the store and I notice, for example, some discounted organic veg that's been knocked down in price, but someone who's on food stamps could still not go and buy that. The ability for someone to buy organic stuff with food cards and food stamps is absolutely limited, even if it's not down in price to be less than the non-organic version. So I think that's a real terrible shame.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned families sitting down together, because a lot of people don't realize that's actually protecting your child from getting involved in drugs, alcohol, smoking. There's studies that show that families that eat dinner together, that actually does have an influence on the children in that way. So to me, that's huge. There's so much temptation out there today, way more even than when I was growing up. And we have about 4 minutes left, and this is the part of the conversation that what we've been talking about so far is the fun part that I love. And I really don't even want to talk about what happened with the weeds. I would rather just, if you wanted to sum up what you think was the end, or where you guys are at with this. Was there lessons learned by anyone involved with this whole weed issue that was going on? Do you think that there was something positive that came out of all that?
Oh, absolutely. I think there was something immensely positive that came out of it. I mean, first of all, the thing is with the local weed ordinances in Oregon, and certainly in an area like Sherman County, where 98% of it is committed to the growth of wheat. Wheat is a very big industry. Anytime anyone reports even a single dandelion, the weed board is obliged to investigate it. And so what happened was the weed board had looked at this. The whole thing got blown out of proportion. The weed board wanted to come and spray our land. We said, we don't want to do that. We tried to work with them. We couldn't. We then took that to the court of public opinion in terms of our customers. We had no idea the extent to which this would blow up. Sherman County received 59,000 emails in about the first 10 to 12 days after I posted a video on YouTube. And what this brought to a head is what I'd kind of mentioned at the start, is it's the fundamental difference and debate between an organic method of agriculture and a non-organic method of agriculture. We came to a very successful and good agreement. There's some great people in Sherman County. The county commission there. It was a difficult discussion at first, and we've sat around the table, we've worked it through with them, we're pleased with the outcome. They've agreed to let us use organic practices and continue to use good quality organic farming practices to manage weeds when they crop up. We've allowed them to come and inspect our land with us anytime that they want to. And I think the wider debate is that a lot of counties throughout the United States have now started to look at this specific case very carefully in terms of how they want to apply things like weed management protocols in their area, and to work with organic farms and organic farmers to come up with a strategy that doesn't involve the use of noxious chemicals like this. I understand that even at the federal level, there's been some interest in terms of how they manage weeds within federal lands. But the wider issue, I mean, we've had emails and calls from people as far as New Zealand and Australia about this issue. I think that it brought to the fore much more the underlying debate about organic food and where we get our food supply from. And for us, that was a very good thing.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that there was like a happy ending here.
Yeah.
And I can't thank you enough, David, with sharing your experience with us and some really great thoughts on how we should think about food and how we're approaching food. And I hope this has inspired some people out there to get back into the kitchen go and seek out some new exciting experiences with food in their life. And I just want to let you know we really appreciate all of you at Azure Farms.
Thank you, Elaine.
Okay, everyone, this is Smart Health Talk. I'm your host, Elaine McFadden, and I just want to thank you so much for joining us, and find us on social media. We're out there, and we'll be back again next Tuesday, 4 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Causing panic today in Russia, Ukraine, Europe, even here in the U.S. by infecting computer systems with data scrambling malware. Even at New Jersey-based pharmaceutical giant Merck and a Pennsylvania-based hospital system.